Right now, we welcome Kevin Supple to the program. He's the Chief Operating Officer for the Francis Howell School District out in St. Charles County. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. Thanks for giving us some time today, and give my friend Matt Dykman my best out there. We worked together in the media for a long time.
Great, will do.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the financial situation the school district finds itself in. I know you guys were on the losing end of a tax levy in this last election. What's the situation you're facing right now?
Well, we've really done some major reductions in the past 5 years or so, and the whole purpose of Proposition Howell, which was the initiative that was on the November ballot, was for us to restore some of the programs and services that we feel are really critical to academic success that we had reduced in prior years as part of the budget reduction. So we're in a situation right now where we're going to have to be more careful about how we add things back. And so we've made a presentation to our board earlier this year, November and December, to talk about how we might begin to add back some of the items that we think are really critical. And so we're going to stop doing some things in order to be able to do some of the things that we think we have to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, can you be a little more specific on what
Sure.
you're going to have to stop doing? I know you've looked at the possibility down the road of maybe having to either cut extracurricular programs or have people pay extra for them. That's just a couple of examples.
Yeah, that was part of what was on the list. We've talked about doing some additional reduction in our curriculum development. We're looking at some slight modifications to our transportation program. Those would be examples of the recommendations that we've made to the board for ways that we might be able to trim our expenditures so that we can add back some of those critical items like technology refresh cycle for our student computers, and also being able to provide some tutoring services for our kids, for those struggling learners, to make sure that they're getting the help that they need.
I know it's difficult when you've got to walk things back that you've already been providing. Let's talk about the transportation for a moment. Actually, years ago in my own school district, they had a levy fail, and they ended up drawing a radius around the schools, and if you lived inside of it, you had to provide your own transportation to school. That's what we're talking about here?
No, I think we're going to take a more measured approach to this. The way that the district grew up, we really aren't designed for neighborhood schools. Our attendance, the district purposefully created larger elementary schools than what you would typically see in a school district. And so they encompass a much larger geographic area.
Okay.
And as such, it's more difficult for our kids to simply walk to school. And you add to that the fact that in a number of our neighborhoods, there aren't adequate sidewalks to facilitate kids walking to school. But we're going to examine those neighborhoods where it does make sense for us to encourage kids to walk to school and hopefully reduce our transportation costs as a result of doing that.
Yeah, we're talking to Kevin Supple with the Francis Howell School District. The loss of the last levy was a fairly close vote. I mean, is there discussion about trying to go back one more time and see if you can get something passed, something maybe smaller?
The board hasn't had those conversations yet. I think we're focusing on the reality that we have now, which is
Right.
Proposition Howell was not successful. And so we're going to work towards balancing our budget for the 17-18 school year, understanding that it doesn't give us much leeway to restore some of those critical items that were a major part of Proposition Howell.
Well, you've got 18,000 students, correct me if I'm wrong, but at what point do you worry, and you've had some good test scores statewide, what point do you worry about it cutting into the school's ability to maintain those standards?
We're worried about that right now. The success that Francis Howell has experienced, I've been with the district for a little over 12 years. When I came, we were not really on anybody's radar in terms of student academic performance. Today, we're in the top 5% of school districts in the state. So That is because we made a concerted effort to direct resources to the areas that we knew were critical for improving student learning. We've had to make changes in some of those ancillary support services, and we do think that that's going to have an impact. It may be a while before that shows up, but the impact is happening right now. It may not show up immediately on our test scores, but we know that it's impacting our kids right now. So we're concerned right now about the loss of those services.
Kevin, what about the teaching staff? Are you looking at losing positions or any sort of pay cuts for staff?
We've done the heavy lifting in terms of our positions in the prior couple of years. So this year, our proposal to the board, which we'll be discussing this evening, is for a status quo staffing, meaning that we aren't really going to be reducing our numbers overall. There may be some modifications in the staffing patterns, but we don't anticipate that we're going to be reducing numbers overall. Our salaries have all been frozen for the current year that we're in right now, and we haven't begun any conversations with our employee groups for next year. But again, within the revenue that we know we're going to need to live with, it will be very difficult to find room within the budget to provide increases for our staff. We'll have to stop doing something else, if that is something that we want to do. But those conversations haven't started yet.
Yeah, you mentioned there's a board meeting tonight, but I'm guessing it's not really dealing with budgeting yet for next year.
No, we had a work session with the board in 2 weeks ago. But tonight, the focus is really going to be on our staffing plan. And of course, staffing drives a tremendous amount of our budget, so it's a very important conversation. But the other conversations about non-personnel items, like the transportation and other items that we've discussed, those will occur as we get into 2017.
Kevin Supple, the COO of the Francis Howell School District, I appreciate your time today, and keep us up to date as things move forward.
Will do.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
Having you on. Obviously, some difficult discussions that are going to take place out there in the Francis Howell High School. I was out there at a basketball game the other day, and that